Hi, I'm your host, Henry Clavo, CEO and founder of Orlando Insight Group. Each episode, we dive into real conversations with technology leaders, innovators, and experts who are shaping the future of IT, data, and cybersecurity. Our goal is simple, is to give you practical insights, real-world strategies, and expert perspective that you can use to drive smarter decisions and stronger results for your business. Thank you for joining us. Today, I'm excited to welcome Lena Hall to the Orlando Insights podcast. Lena is an expert in practical AI adoption, data engineering, cloud architecture, and programmatic design, system design. She focuses on what many organizations struggle with most, turning AI from hype into real, scalable business value. She is the founder of and CEO of Droid AI, where she helps companies define actionable data plus AI strategies, integrate LLMs into complex systems, connect AI solutions with custom data business tools, and architect outcomes that actually deliver results. With more than 15 years of deep technical expertise, Lena has led large scale data analytics, machine learning, and cloud initiatives. Before founding Droid AI, she served as head of developer experience for North America at AWS, led big data developer relations at Microsoft, and working at the center of innovation across two of the most influential cloud platforms in the world. She's also an international keynote speaker and shares practical AI knowledge on her YouTube channel, helping engineers and leaders alike cut through the noise and build responsible and effectively. Lena brings both strategic clarity and hands-on execution experience, and today we're going to explore what really takes to make AI work at scale. So, Lena, welcome.
Thank you. I am so excited to be on this podcast. I've been following you for a while, so it's been great to get on this discussion with you. And thank you for the great intro. My current role is a senior director of developer strategy at Akamai, which is quite recent. So I joined Akamai in October 2025, and it's been great to help the company bootstrap the developer relations team and define the direction there.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, and you started recently, correct?
Yeah, October last year. So it's been a few months now. Definitely feeling like uh, I feel like I've been there for 5 years, but
Mm.
also for 2 weeks. You know how it goes. Sometimes you're getting deep into initiatives and connections with other teams and building many ambitious plans for the future. So, really excited for what we are doing this year and the code samples and prototypes that we're building.
Yeah, Akamai. Yeah, once you get your hands wet with in a year or two, you'll see the results. You worked across AWS, Microsoft, now Akamai. When did it become clear to you that models alone don't solve real business problems?
Yeah, I think it's useful to go back to when it all started, when developers first got an opportunity to create an account, on ChatGPT website and talk to GPT 3.5 and get a sense for, oh, this is different than just the template that response that you get from a standard machine learning model. And then ever since, I think each model release was something significant. We would actually feel, the difference between the quality in responses. And I think right at that moment, companies started to realize how powerful this technology is. And we started to see alternatives, from companies like Anthropic and some of them more open weight models. And I think right now, if we look at it through the lens of how we got here, when the new model comes, we know that we already have pretty powerful models. We know that, 6 months ago, it's been pretty great and it's getting better and better. And it just depends on how you actually apply it in your specific sense. So it becomes less less of an issue to pick one specific model versus another, and more about what kind of infrastructure around how you handle the model your company is willing to invest in. So it's one thing to call an API and hope for the best response, because you're going to maybe get the model to follow the output rules that you indicated in your prompt. But there will be a time when the model sends the miswritten JSON, or doesn't follow specific guidelines. So you have to think about not just what is the prompt that you're sending, but what is the whole infrastructure and harness that you build around the model to keep your business on track, even if that model step isn't exactly fulfilling the result 100% of the time. And this is where it gets interesting, because there are so many different use cases for businesses that they have different risk levels. And depending on the industry that you're in and specific tasks that you're solving, the answer would be different of how much you're willing to bet on the right response versus how much work you actually need to do around the model.
I'm laughing because as developers or engineers, I had a conversation with a client, like they want to get rid of dev and testing environment, replace it with AI models or infrastructure. And I was a little surprised, taken back by that. But as you explained, um, replacing the testing team with a process that is probabilistic, and you don't know what's the results, so you're relying on a model to essentially do what people have been doing for a long time. So it really surprises me.
Yeah, and I would just add here that I think it resonates with me as well, because I see a lot of product people, especially, who, when they're getting into this whole LLM landscape, they don't immediately realize what types of tasks the LLM is actually great at, and they're trying to delegate the decisions to the LLMs. Whereas I think the most effective way of using an LLM or building an LLM into a product is when you are crystal clear as a product manager or as a CTO or whoever's working on that part of the business, clear on what your business goals and outcomes are that you want to achieve. And sometimes when there is an onboarding of an LLM into a project, people kind of are very eager to see, oh, how much can we actually just put on the LLM step to delegate? And I think that before you do that, you have to articulate with your own team what decisions are super important for us to keep ownership of, because an LLM might decide completely different than what your business actually needs.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. But what I mean is dedicated to a probabilistic model, which is in itself a probability statistics engine anyway. How do you explain the shift from prompt engineering to context engineering to executives and engineer? This is more of your field now. Um, Maybe you can elaborate more on the latter.
Absolutely. So when we started getting into programming with LLMs, all of us started with writing prompts. So usually, whether it's through web interface or through a coding agent, would formulate kind of the task at hand that we're trying to solve. And there's different level of thoroughness and structure that people put into the prompt. And still, I think that that's the way that majority of the people operate when they use coding agents or LLMs. Context engineering started getting more popular last year, and I really loved all the talks by Dex Horthy, who kind of introduced that term and made it stick in the industry, which implies that the prompt isn't the only thing that matters for a successful AI output. There is a lot of information that the context window is filled with that isn't just the prompt that you send, and then also how you populate that prompt really matters. So everything that we work with during our LLM context window has to fit in a specific number of characters, and it consists of the instructions, it consists of the data, it consists of the tools, tool descriptions, metadata. There's a ton of it that pollutes the context as we work with the model more and more. And then there's been an observation that the longer you interact with a coding agent, the less effective it becomes, the more the context of it is filling up. So there are multiple techniques that emerged since then of how we can optimize working with an LLM or with a coding agent to make it actually prioritize the right things and pay attention to the right context when we feed it information. So subagents was one of those things where each subagent starts with a clear context and it can focus on a very specific set of tasks that only matter in that subagent's context. With subagents, we need a coordinator as well that checks in on the outcomes. There is a now popular approach with splitting in the implementation in phases. So phased development approach where you do not send one prompt and ask an LLM to just implement it. You first brainstorm and research with it. So collect more information around pros and cons of what you're trying to build, the trade-offs. Then you take that, you review it, you actually read the plan, you spend significant amount of time on reading the text file, or the artifact that it produces. And then you work with an LLM to create an actual plan, the implementation tasks with clear acceptance criteria, because the further step really depends on the correctness of what is your mental alignment with that plan. If you prevent any inconsistencies and inaccuracies at that level, your implementation might just end up being one-shotted with the LLM. So that approach has been extremely effective on all sorts of code bases. So people saying that, it doesn't work for a large code base, it's too complex. But if you split it into the right task, if you are removing ambiguity in acceptance criteria, in task definitions, it really helps an LLM to be more useful, to give you a more accurate answer. We also are starting to think more radical approaches, I would say, with context management and coordination and orchestration. Things like Ralph Wiggum loops, like Gastown, the interesting techniques where people are running dozens of agents at the same time, and there needs to be a bigger investment in the infrastructure around it, especially around coordination and communication between agents. So outsourcing the state, not just to MD files, but to actual graph-based task management that agents can use as tools and coordinate between each other on different states. So, and who knows what's going to come next.
No, that makes sense, especially current clients, and I'll say that companies are adapting these tools, but at a very slow pace, so they're not there yet. And if I mention a company, you'd be surprised that they're not even at step one. So this is good insights for the data business community, so they can understand how to use these tools within, let's say, GitHub Copilot, and all the traditional methods. So I'm glad that you were able to share that a bit information.
Yeah, and I think related to the data community as well, I am excited to start seeing actual AI copilots within data engineering tools like dbt, Databricks. They are really actively working on injecting the right context into their AI copilots, just to make developer life easier, so that you don't have to manually search and execute queries. You the LLM that they have just is aware of the environment that it's in, and it makes your job as a data engineer a lot easier, where you just focus less on the routine tasks and really elevate yourself into a role of a decision maker and the person who knows the trade-offs. So you still need to have that in-depth knowledge and expertise, but your brain has more time to think about more important questions.
Yes, especially cost. The typical conversation: how much it's going to cost, when can you deliver it on time, and will it automate certain tasks? But yeah, it's right now it's more like, can you automate these tasks in the traditional sense, but we haven't thought about different sense, like outside of the traditional office work. What can we innovate in that space instead of what we are currently used to? You've designed systems at massive scales. What's different about scaling AI systems compared to traditional distributed systems, Lena?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of the things from traditional distributed systems are very relevant in AI systems as well. I like to use the parallel of the two generals problem
Mm,
from distributed systems. So this is one of those things where in distributed systems we have a network of nodes, and network isn't always reliable. When we have multiple players in the network, how do we coordinate on a task? And the two generals problem outlines that it's not really possible to have reliable communication and agreement with an unreliable component like a network. When two generals try to decide when to attack, they have to decide on the timing and whether both of them agree, and they can only win if both of them are set to go on a battle. So with AI, I feel like this is extremely relevant because we have this interaction between a human and an LLM where human has intent and then an LLM has to interpret that intent. And that step is an unreliable component. So there is always a chance that the intent that you had in your head can be misinterpreted by an AI. And that makes it important for us to take the steps to have a backup plan around this.
mm,
And the way that I like to think of, let's say, building AI agents or any unreliable components is we can basically think of them as a microservice. And if a microservice goes down, you have to have a back off plan. You have to have like a retry strategy. You have to figure out what to do when a system takes longer to respond than necessary with timeouts. I think that's one of the elements of, like, if you're building agentic systems, especially with multiple agents with different roles, you can treat it basically as microservices in your distributed systems. We do have to be prepared for accepting or handling different errors that come from APIs, like too many requests or response taking too long or being the wrong format. What else? I think one of the other differences is that some LLM requests do take a while to get back to us. So if you're sending a large input, LLM, especially if it uses thinking capability, it might take a minute to think. And you have to be prepared for what that means for real time. So
mm,
with a lot of us in distributed systems world are used to event-driven development and systems like Kafka for real-time events. And I see a lot of in kind of inertia in the way that those data engineers are kind of trying to handle AI agent requests in a similar way. But batching really makes a lot of sense in that approach, because you're not going to trigger a Kafka function if it takes a minute for an LLM to get back to you. So it doesn't really make sense to do some things real time. And batching becomes actually a great strategy for a lot of the requests there. But I do think that it enables a lot of personalization and a lot of the in-context improvements when you design reliable AI agentic systems in the way you design distributed systems.
And I guess to answer some common fears and questions, there's a story that I read that a researcher lost like years of research by inputting their ChatGPT model. So that is like he gave permissions to access his laptop, and it just delete everything. So I guess,
Yeah.
what is your view on that? Should we trust it, or we should be on guard to protect our IP?
Absolutely, to be on guard to protect your IP, because if you give an LLM the tool to access your data with certain permissions, and you give it, I mean, it has a reasoning loop internally to decide when to use which tool, you don't actually control the reasoning loop as much as we want to do it. So if it has access to a tool that gives it a delete permission or a alter permission, it might edit something out or delete the files you don't want to be deleted. I am a huge advocate of being extremely intentional about what tools we give an LLM access to. And if you do decide to give an LLM access to a certain function or capability that has potential to delete or change your assets in a way that is dangerous, it has to be in some kind of isolated environment that isn't connected to your actual like production business data, unless you are extremely certain in what you are doing and you have ran a bunch of integration tests and everything is extremely correct. But I would recommend for any business critical use case where customer data is on the line to be extremely conscious of especially the dangerous tools that you give for data modification. I would prefer, if you really have a great business use case, to give read-only view to help you research and figure out the plan, and then use more deterministic tools to work with critical operations. Yes, that would be my view here.
I agree. Yeah, you always need a sandbox environment and a dev environment just to make sure that it is working and it doesn't act up. But yeah, always have that backup, as they say, to protect your IP. Just to move on to, I guess, frameworks in AI. And for enterprise, what do most AI agent frameworks fall short in production environments? Have you seen any use cases from your customers or in general on that?
Yeah, so I am seeing a mixed picture from customers. So we have quite a few agent frameworks in the market: Identic AI, Crew AI, LangChain, LangGraph. There's quite a few of them. Most of them, kind of deciding between them becomes almost like a conversation between which JavaScript framework do we pick. So it's the matter of your stack, your programming language, your personal preference, skills of your development team. I do not have strong opinions on which framework makes most sense. I think that we are seeing development of open standards like the agent communication protocol, something that allows more interoperability between agents, and then tools like protocols like MCP that allows level of interoperability on the tool landscape. So, but I am seeing quite a lot of companies rolling out their own ways of interacting with an LLM, just because you can one-shot a new agent framework with Cloud Code in in an hour. So there is that, and a lot of companies have very specific kind of ways that they like to work with the ecosystem. It would be still the same primitives, the same abstractions. I really am a huge fan of 12-factor agents. Best practice. So there is a GitHub repository. Again, it's from Dex. It's a great set of principles there. I'm also seeing some new approaches that emerge around, integrating LLMs, where it's more deterministic in a way that when you write a prompt, or when you have a task, you don't immediately generate an outcome with an LLM, but you convert it into almost like an intermediary programming language that more deterministically converts into code. So something in between English and code that's more accurate. It's called BAML. I recently learned about it at one of the conferences. So I think, back to your question, if your company has a specific use case, it's the matter of the trade-off between, do you want to have control over a specific scope? If you are okay with the level of development, advancement, and trajectory of an existing agent framework, great. Maybe that's a great way to go. But if you have a really forward-thinking team that needs to be in control of every single layer of interaction with an LLM, you might be better off just rolling out your own way of working with it. It's not that complicated. It's kind of depends on the level of granularity you want to have.
And time and resources.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you have staff for managing all that, for sure.
Just to move on, I know you have a time. I guess this is in regards to leadership. How has leading large developer and architecture teams shaped how you think about AI responsibility?
Yeah, I think it changes the way we think about productivity. If we think back a few years ago, and it might be different for people in different organizations, but I do remember that most people, when LLMs came out, were extremely skeptical that, oh, this is just a thing that will disappear, or the results are actually not great. And my thinking here is, when something big like this comes out, it's usually never as good as it can be, but there's people who see what exists now versus people who see what's going to be possible with it 2 years from now. And I think the industry kind of got split into the two groups. Majority of people are, okay, we're skeptical. We're not going to touch it in this state because it's not great right now. And then there were people who are like, I have to switch to this because this is the future. And I'm going to put all of my time exploring what can be done with this. And now I think everybody's realizing that, okay, this is actually great. It's working out. And this is where our productivity increases hugely. I think you mentioned in the beginning that still in majority of our organizations, we do not see this future being propagated equally. Not everybody has access to these tools equally. Not everybody has time in their day job to actually work with these systems equally. But what is clear is that when you do learn how to leverage AI and these tools, you free up a lot of time to be more impactful in your organization. And I think my advice to team leaders, engineering managers, people who lead large teams is to give people an opportunity to leverage those tools, to get comfortable with them, because once that threshold is crossed, once the person is comfortable, you are going to see massive personal productivity gains for each kind of employee. And let's say if it's content creation, you can easily cut down on 40% of your routine tasks. It will not create better content than you, but it will help you not have to handwrite some things that you were previously doing. For engineering, for coding, I think I don't even have to explain it. It's kind of evident that in a lot of labs that work on LLMs, most engineers don't write code anymore. They just prompt, and you're elevated on a whole new level of decision making, becoming the CTO of agents versus the regular person employee.
Lena, we could talk all day long, but yeah, I would love to have you come back and share more insights. And yeah, what you presented is awesome and very valuable to the community. So we thank you. What's coming up for you for 2026? Anything exciting, Lena?
Yes, I am extremely excited about everything that's going on with model research. I just yesterday there was this amazing new coding model that came out from OpenAI, Codex Spark, which is super fast on implementation tasks. So if you haven't had a chance to try it, do it, because it's surreal when you write a prompt to code up a whole new feature. You don't blink and it's already there. So it's a whole new level of productivity. And I think for community events, I'm very excited for KubeCon, NVIDIA GTC, for AI engineers, World's Fair, so many interesting events coming up. And hopefully I can run into some of you listeners there.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, they'll definitely be tuning in. And where can they find you? Do you have your handles for YouTube and LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. So on LinkedIn, I am Lena Hall, Lena-Hall, and same on YouTube. My channel is AI with Lena Hall. So if you ever want to dive deeper into some of the interesting tools and concepts, or just stay connected, just ping me on LinkedIn. Always happy to chat and connect.
Awesome. Thank you, Lena, for coming, and we'll talk to you soon. So that wraps up our episode with Lena Hall at Orlando Insights Podcast. To catch more talks with people like Lena, please visit our YouTube and Spotify at Orlando Insight Groups. And we look forward to the next podcast. So take care. Bye.